they no longer allowed in restaurants? Can they not go into these different locations in the city? What will that mean for tourists coming from other countries? Now, before you go too far down that road, remember who the victims are here, okay? The vaccinated are the victims. And remember who the vaccinated are. All right? We talk about the unvaccinated all the time, and rightly so, but remember, this is about the tyranny of a minority. The majority of this country, people from left and right and center and north and south, all places, all faces, the majority have taken the step to protect themselves and others. Don't forget that piece. It's not just about you and how you feel about you. It's about what you could do for others, right? You have rights, but you don't have the right to infringe on others' rights. So that's the majority. And that majority has had their rights to work and live as they want infringed upon, in significant part because of those who have failed to do the same and help this virus change into what it is now, the Delta variant. And it's not a coincidence that so many resistors are Trumpers. Messaging around the vaccine by Trump and co sent the wrong message. And even his former cabinet secretary at HHS now gets that. Alex Azar writes, as I reflect, we could have done more to address vaccine hesitancy. I'm glad former President Trump got vaccinated, but it would have been even better for him to have done so on national television so that his supporters could see how much trust and confidence he has in what is arguably one of his greatest accomplishments. You know, even that statement, probably too generous. Trump did get vaccinated, but he did so in secret. If you'll remember, it happened in January. He didn't announce it until months later. And he never sold the vaccine up until this day like he has anything else. Why not? Now, think about how many lives could have been saved if Trump made the vaccine as much of a symbol of support for him as his hats. But another key development would also be sending the message that the vax is something to take. Over 50% of people who haven't been vaccinated say that the FDA approving the vaccine would make a difference. The New York Times reports tonight it could be coming by early next month. Approval for Pfizer. Let's take that to a better mind. Trump's former Surgeon General Jerome Adams, back with us on Primetime Doctor. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Chris.
Now here's my problem. Well, Biden said fully approved vaccine by the fall, so this is actually faster. No, not really. They've known how important FDA approval is for many months. And they've had so much data. They started off with 40,000 plus test cases before it went to over 100, 200 million people in this country. What do you think of the idea that it's still not going to be approved until next month?
Well, I was really glad to hear that they're now putting a focus on getting the bureaucracy out of the way. Folks need to understand the FDA is a big agency, and they're having to pull people from other jobs to focus on this. But the problem, Chris, is that at the rate they're going, it might be a moot point by the time they actually get it licensed, because you could have variants generated that then now escape the vaccines. And so we're really seeing hospitalizations go up, lives, quite frankly, being lost because of this delay. And we need to get this vaccine licensed appropriately. But again, as you mentioned, we have the safety and efficacy data. We need to get it licensed as quickly as possible, not just for hesitancy's sake, but I've talked with you about this before, because it will allow companies the legal cover to then mandate these vaccines. Even the U.S. military has said that they will not mandate this vaccine until it's fully licensed.
Strong point. Also, I've heard that getting a booster shot is not really practicable until the FDA approves the drug, because you won't have test data. You know, you can't get an EUA for a booster because you won't have the trial data. So they're waiting on that as well. What do you make of what Secretary Alex Azar said about his wish that former President Trump had been more aggressive in his messaging about the vaccine?
Well, I absolutely wish that President Trump and others had been more assertive. As you may remember, Vice President Pence and I were among the first to get our vaccines on live TV because I felt it was important as a black man to get vaccinated. We know that vaccine hesitancy is higher in minority populations. I felt it was important for Vice President Pence as a well-known Republican to get vaccinated. But yes, it would have helped. It could have done nothing but help had President Trump done it more publicly and loudly. And I'm so glad to see so many Republicans now loudly calling for it. And I hope it's not too late. I hope it happens before we get a variant, which again escapes the vaccines and again makes this a moot point.
In the most recent polling, 30+%, the highest percentage of people who are unvaccinated, were white Republicans. In your time in the administration, why do you believe it wasn't more of a priority for Trump and his people?
Well, what I would say to you is vaccine hesitancy has been an issue long before COVID came along. You'll remember that we almost lost our measles eradication status in 2019. And at the beginning of the pandemic, I was actually about to board a plane to go around the country and help boost vaccine confidence. So this has always been a problem, but you've talked about this a lot. The pandemic came along with a presidential election and things got politicized, misinformation got out there, and now we're trying to dig out of that hole. And I do want to say that we are, in fact, having some success. Almost 750,000 people vaccinated. Vaccinations up 25% this week, particularly in areas that had lower than average vaccination rates. So as you mentioned, we need to normalize that positive behavior.
Yes, absolutely. As we all know, you know this very well as former Surgeon General, the best way to change behavior is to reward when things are done right. And
Exactly.
You now have the southeastern states, which are suffering the most in terms of new cases, have the highest rates of new vaccination. Now, what is the threshold that we need? Is it too late? Or what do we have to see in terms of vaccinations? Because as we both know, 70% was really, a figurative number in terms of what would give you herd immunity. What do we need to see to get to a place where you expect Delta variant cases in terms of positivity to come down?
Well, we saw the UK come down pretty quickly, and I think there's still the potential for us to come down quickly if we can not only get more people vaccinated, but also engage in these mitigation measures like masking, like a more strategic level of testing. So I think it's still incredibly possible, but what I think your viewers need to understand is this concept that I call microherds. It's not really about national immunity so much as it is about making sure within your household, within your workplace, within your child's school, you have appropriate levels of protection so that you can prevent spread from turning into an outbreak. And so think about what you can do and what those around you can do to protect yourselves. That's how we stop this pandemic.
Kids, parents, there's confusion. Some of it's being once again politicized and weaponized. They want you to mask up right in front of your kids. I don't know why that would be a dirty thing to do, by the way. But what is your guidance in terms of how to deal with kids? I mean, look, cities are going to have to figure this out. As I said at the top of the show, parents can't do anything about their kids not being of age to get vaccinated. And very many parents are going to be hesitant to get a kid vaccinated when it's not FDA approved. But localities will have to figure out what their plan is for kids. But for parents who are confused about what kind of masking to do themselves and their kids, do you have guidance?
Absolutely. I think number one, if you are unvaccinated, then you absolutely need to be wearing a mask when you're around people outside of your household. Your child should be wearing a mask if they're unvaccinated when they're out in public, regardless. And if you're in an area of substantial or high spread, as the CDC has said, then everyone should be wearing a mask when they're out in public. So while it seems confusing, it's actually vaccinate if you can, and if you can't vaccinate, then you especially need to wear a mask. And if you're in a place that's a high spread, then wearing a mask when you're in public will protect you and those around you.
Dr. Jerome Adams, appreciate having you again. Let's keep this going and get the information out there for people. Let's track progress where we find it.
And I just also want to say to the governors out there, please don't take tools out of the hands of public health officials. Again, let that conversation happen on a local level and let public health officials do what the data says they should be doing. It just drives me crazy, Chris, to see that we're sending people into battle without bulletproof vests, to see that we're not letting them utilize the tools that we know work will help stop this pandemic. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you for putting that message out there.